Long ago, in a distant land, Ubisoft, created the most unspeakable game to ever be released on a storefront. This game had everything. A grind to last an eternity, solid mechanics and presentation, and a gameplay loop so addicting that all who play the game would find themselves within its thrall. While the game was made to break those who'd experience it slowly over time, there'd be a select few who'd find themselves forever cursed to roam Heathmoor, not for glory, but for honor. Hey, my name is Jan. I talk about video games and other things sometimes. I like to think of myself as a pretty reasonable guy, but like every American teen, I had a moment in my upbringing where I got into something questionable. Not drugs or alcohol, my life, or you, instead it was For Honor. For Honor is a fighting objective-based game revolving around success and embarrassment and not always about objectives. The game was revealed at E3 2015. For Ubisoft, this was an amazing trailer. They've had a lot of amazing trailers that don't match up with the game, and while this one also doesn't match up with the game, it's a fantastic reveal trailer. Finally, a game for us gamers to find our chosen path. And the one thing stopping it from being great is that none of it is actual in-game footage. But it has the potential to be in your imagination. And sometimes, in the midst of combat, this footage can be real in-game, kind of. Not the massive battlefields or bodies stockpiling the grounds or clean photorealistic graphics and animations. That'd be too much to expect. Just the pure visceral combat that can be real for moments at a time, thus creating the magic of For Honor. Close encounters of blades, adrenaline, and violence. For across the land of Heathmoor, the only rule of law is violence, and honor is more of a suggestion as opposed to a requirement. For Honor is a team-based fighting game first and foremost, and the fights in this game always allow for a turnaround if you possess the skill. The easiest way to describe how the potential turnarounds in the For Honor fights can go is with the Justin Wong theory. Who's Justin Wong? He plays fighting games, and he is also the creator of the Justin Wong theory. He discovered this theory in a freak accident playing Street Fighter, where he attempted to use Chun-Li's crazy kick move and got completely parried over the entire course of it, and then proceeded to lose the match, and as a result, this has become what he's known for. That and being the heart to every woman's thumbs up. Now, let's step back from Justin's social interactions and instead focus on what happened in his gameplay. Justin Wong suffered a complete and utter total defeat / turnaround of his entire match, before a crowd of screaming people. Imagine this happening in every multiplayer game you play For Honor when you lose in your head. There's no giant crowds, or at least most of the time when people play, but there's a certain feeling of loss and disbelief that's present. That or rage, which is actually far more common. But the point in the Justin Wong theory I've created is that no matter how good you are, if the game allows for player input for a comeback, victory is not guaranteed, no matter how certain it may be. For Honor keeps this design philosophy throughout in the form of, when reading your opponent, if you make just one mistake, and I mean just one, and if they're skilled enough to punish you, they can end it then and there. However, this can work both ways. If you know what to do in For Honor to completely counter the guy in the situation you're in, you're good. Read him like a book. I think I'm actually pretty bad at For Honor, so in all fairness, this could just be a clay fighter situation with every match. I believe I have the illusion of control in For Honor, and that's what's important to me. So let's review what we've seen. A historical combat game based on 3 real factions. Well, what did these guys bring to the table? I mean, there were only 3 factions at launch. How could I be pulled in just from this trailer? Knights? Vikings? Samurai? What color is my parachute? Well, almost everyone can actually fit into one of these three categories, and they added more since the game launched. There's the knights wielding traditional medieval weaponry, or as traditional as I think it can be, given the creative liberties Ubisoft takes with every historical adaptation they make in their games. They represent the baseline starting point, and just about everyone starts their For Honor journey with the Warden, a character with infinite potential in their moveset I still don't know how to fight. There's the Vikings, who embodied the primal strength of man with their Nordic gods and tattoos. The only downside about them is I think compared to the other two factions, they're drip-starved, since the default looks on the other factions are a lot cleaner, and the Vikings are forced to interface with Ubisoft's facial animations the most, instead of with metal helmets and masks. Finally, there's the Samurai, which embodied the dream of most Western men, wielding a katana and not being cringe. These three elements made up the core of For Honor, allowing anyone to fit themselves into the world of Heathmoor and have their own self-insert to clown on their opponent. Now let's look at Heathmoor today. I'm not even sure if Heathmoor is the name of the For Honor continent, come to think of it, but we've got Destiny 2, we've got Dying Light 2, and Assassin's Creed 2 collaborations, which that one makes sense. Ubisoft owns Assassin's Creed. My prediction is that Half-Life 2 will get a collab at some point. Let me know if that's true if you're from the future. And oh yes, besides the collaborations in For Honor, we have new factions as I previously said. There's the Wu Lin. They're the gang from ancient China and also give me a fight or flight response upon hearing Wabi Bo Bo. Wabi Bo Bo. Which is single-handedly responsible for me losing every match I meet Shaolin. I know what you may be thinking. So what? We got knights, Vikings, samurai, and the Chinese. What about pirates? What about Skull and Bones, my all-time favorite quadruple A game? Well, I haven't played Skull and Bones, but we do have pirates and a whole lot of other stuff to throw into the pile. The last faction is just whatever the heck you want. Pirates, got them. Egyptians, you bet. Afira, I think their background is Arabian. I'm not too sure on the historical connection of them. But yeah, we've got that for you too. Aztecs, as checked. I can't play this guy at all, but they clown on me every chance they get. You get the idea. Khatun. For Honor has evolved from that holy trinity of the world combat culture to be a global tour de force of a different cast. And I'd say it's good that they kept adding characters, even if I don't think they've ever had a meta where all of them were perfectly balanced. But it doesn't matter, because in the lower levels of rank where I am, you can beat anybody with anybody if you know the mechanics of the game. So we've got the style and characters down, and we have a game-winning premise. So how the heck do you even play the game? For Honor is a big-brain game for big-brain people. Yes, yes, I am somewhat serious. But yes, I know that also isn't entirely true. Let's talk about the basics though. So you can lock onto enemies, which is essential in the same way it is for Dark Souls. And you're given 3 directions to move your weapon for your guard. Left, right, and up. You can perform light attacks, which are fast damage, heavy attacks for heavier damage at the cost of speed. If you're matching the position of your opponent's triangle, you're able to block their attack. Some characters, such as the Peacekeeper, have a time on their block, which causes the guard to disappear, so you have to time it. In addition to blocking, you're able to dodge attacks as well, which is especially important, since any orange attacks coming from your enemy cannot be blocked. You're able to parry your opponent's moves by doing a heavy attack at the same time they're doing an attack at you, presenting an opening. And outside of this, you're also able to guard break your opponent for a throw or an opening, or perform a guard break to stop them from guard breaking you. If you kill them with a heavy attack, you're given the opportunity to perform a soul-crushing execution while they rage for 10 seconds watching their character die, and have a longer respawn timer, and can't be revived. That's the basics of everything. There's a lot more to go into detail on, such as when being attacked by multiple people, you build a revenge meter which gives you a shield, or how if you're locked onto somebody and another guy approaches to attack, you can still block and parry them by moving your guard in their direction. For the sake of this video, you'll be fine with this basic explanation. If you're watching this, realistically, you have played For Honor or heard of it or have a vague idea as to any of this, but this should be enough to get you through it even if you don't. Every character has a move list to help you understand what they're good at, the different nuances to their kits, and how best to utilize them. Everybody has their own moveset, but also a lot of them are very similar or kinda shared. So for example, look at this guy, the Black Prior, and this other guy, the Kyoshin. Respectively, they're from their own factions, Knights and Samurai, and functionally, they're also very similar, which is good to have knowledge transfer over. With that explanation over, you may be wondering, yawn, how is this a fighting game? This doesn't sound too complicated, and it looks like you just slash people. Well, take a look at these combos. For Honor's combat system has so much depth and complexity with how you can react to every input your opponent has, that it's almost overwhelming. The whole game is a big piece of rock, paper, scissors where you're constantly playing this game of action and reaction. And I want to talk about what I love about this game and what I hate about this game, on how this fantastic cycle works, and just my overall opinion of For Honor, since I used to play it so much back then, and I revisited it recently just to have another idea on how things are going. So let's talk about it. For Honor has many mechanics to learn and utilize during fights with fighting game structure, and at the highest level of play, there's a certain rhythm you have to be in to both match your opponent's moves, while also being able to get in your combos. And if you're new, where this can get complicated is with fights, specifically when an opponent starts an attack or you start an attack, and then you cancel it and lead into something else. Fights can be hectic barrages of desperately trying to read your opponent and block whatever they're going to do next, while you attempt to have enough mix-up potential to come back and win the round. The thing about For Honor, and really any fighting game, is that it's all mind games on what you and your opponent do and how the two of you read each other. I mean, look at this poor knight. What can he do? The only thing he's reading here are his last rites. For Honor is a game where you can act with your head, and your head be completely empty, and you beat the guy who's grinded the game enough to hit 70 reputation on a fourth of the cast. You just have to figure out the rules of the game, which aren't combos or finds or sophisticated light Yagami plays. It's just doing whatever works, and seeing if your opponent knows how to deal with it, or knowing how to deal with your opponent's own strategies. It's a tricky balance that way, which tends to lead to the question, when do you deserve to win in a game of psychological warfare? Well, unfortunately, only you can answer this, but my ongoing theory is whenever you play better through reading your opponent better, or simply just knowing how to pull off that offensive to crush them and they just can't do anything about it. It's all psychic warfare, that's why it's in the thumbnail, so you know I'm serious about it. Now, let's take a detour and see psychic warfare in action. Hannah, please tear up the track.
Nothing is more confused than to be ordered into a war, to die, or to be maimed for life, without the faintest idea of what's going on. Isn't it clear that the war makers are gambling with your lives, while pocketing huge profits?
Psychic warfare has a very rich history of being used in conflict to press an advantage, or to exploit weakness within others. This is from a Vietnamese radio station that sent out messages to discourage Americans during the war. I'd feel pretty disheartened about the conflict as well, hearing the radio host directly address myself and my mission. While For Honor doesn't allow for communication with the enemy team, outside of expressing hatred for each other, where the community has made their own key to communicate with each other that way, every move you make helps your opponent figure out what you're going to do next, or it doesn't and they get clowned on. And your actions are simultaneously influencing the opponent and how they interact. It's just like with the radio station. That radio station influenced how those soldiers felt when entering combat, and in For Honor, your mental and confidence shifts as you face off with your opponent. Dodge attacks can carry you through many fights, especially when you start. But not all of them, so a lot of For Honor's finality comes from making use of knowing how and when to use your character's kit, versus knowing how to counter how the opponent makes use of their kit, and that's the beauty of it. I think it really flows together to create a satisfying combat loop that's addicting to keep playing even when you're just helping your opponents create a pile of corpses to burn. Though the beauty isn't from watching that guy execute you in the most embarrassing 15 seconds of your life. The beauty is from doing the same thing to that guy and then spamming "good fight" in chat. It's a far from perfect system, and you could say that almost any fighting game on the market allows for psychic warfare with better graphics, mechanics at a better price point, and with this delicate game of action and reaction. And to that I say, Street Fighter 6 doesn't have fights. For Honor does. Checkmate, atheists. I know okay isn't the best sounding praise, though it is the closest praise I can give for this. I think the campaign definitely deserves credit, since honestly I'm surprised the game even has one. And I don't want to spoil anything in it, because on the off chance that you still play the game by the time you finish watching the video, the campaign is one of the few things that I think could pull you in a little to the lore. It's nice background for the multiplayer. Plus, if you get some of the secret collectibles, you can make the Alaska Republic emblem like I did. I was going to use it for the thumbnail and have a bunch of ideas, but at the end of the day, there simply isn't enough Alaskan representation in For Honor for it to make sense. The campaign lets you play as all three of the factions and try out the roster of characters that were in the game at launch. The story tells the tale of Apollyon, leader of the Blackstone Legion, and her quest to plunge the world into eternal conflict to bring about the strongest race of people among all factions. She's basically the medieval version of Senator Armstrong, except she doesn't want to end war, but I also don't remember whether... I don't remember what Senator Armstrong wanted, come to think of it.
I have a dream! What? That one day, every person in this nation will control their own destiny.
The story is about those who work and stand against Apollyon, and as she goes about her plot, I'd argue she's the main character, and we just happen to view her story from different perspectives and how it plays out. I won't spoil anything, but it's mildly interesting to see the different dynamics of power and the other factions attempt to pursue peace during Apollyon's quest. There's more lore as well. I think the seasons have something going on with Horkos versus Chimera. What's Horkos versus Chimera? I don't know. I didn't keep up with the lore season to season when I wasn't playing For Honor. I'm not nuts about programs for lore that do things by season, but if you're a big For Honor historian, it's out there, so you can hunt that down if the lore of the world invests you. Personally, I kind of wish they just made it like real life lore. I'd rather learn about real history with all these like historical factions fighting each other. But once again, there's the whole creative liberties and the fact it takes place in a fictional world, so what can you do? And as said, the campaign's pretty okay. I'd recommend playing through it once. I don't know how much more you'll get out of it, but it's good for just having fun with the game. To start, I understand it's very silly to put For Honor on a pedestal for allowing the player to win in a multiplayer game, since literally any multiplayer game has a win condition where you can get dopamine from winning. But I think if you don't play For Honor, it's very difficult to convey man's primordial nature in this game specifically. We have an inherent love of conflict. Some of us do. I can't speak for everybody, but hence why so many people watch sports. Sports can serve as a substitute for war. For Honor acts as a substitute for war in the way that winning fills your brain with dopamine. In a game entirely based around beating the odds, being able to win in any of these terrible game modes fills one with dopamine. It's just like League of Legends, the only difference being that when I win in For Honor, I feel it was because of my own skill as opposed to League of Legends, where I feel like I win because my opponents half the time are too busy watching VTuber streams and flaming their own teammates. The truth about For Honor is this: victory is fantastic, to come across the odds and be completely free from the suffering of the match, knowing that you're better at funny sword game. It doesn't matter how much work he's put into the game, you're the funny sword game guy. You made your opponent watch the 10 seconds of embarrassment while you giggled and kicked your feet. That's the beauty of For Honor. While this game can bring you to catastrophic wall-punching lows, you have so many moments of "this is better than sets" while your girlfriend looks at you like you're insane and a sicko.
You lost Zone A.
For Honor is a live service game, and I don't think I've talked much about live service games in my videos, but as a general rule of thumb, with the exception of the finals, I don't like them very much. I say this as a reformed Apex Legends player, so I have a bit of experience with the model. Yo, post-recording yawn here. The model in Marvel Rivals isn't that bad either. I mean, if you buy the Battle Pass, you get to keep it. I think that's a good thing. I think it should be that way for every game. It's kind of weird that it took so long to introduce it, but yeah. Live service models that are pro-consumer, good. live service models that aren't bad. Anyway, interruption over. Back to the video. For Honor's live service model is about the same as all the other ones, but there's a major point I want to touch on first. This game was launched in February 2017, and at time of me working on this video, it's February 2025, if we ignore the fact I started on this in September with playing the game again. The game has been around for 8 years, and if we check Steam charts, there's still a population for the game. This isn't counting Uplay or consoles or anything, so there's still an audience before you hop into the "it's a live service doomed to die." My counterpoint is that there's too many people choosing to engage and rage with each other in Dominion still. The live service model in For Honor is just fine. It's no different than the other ones, except in my opinion, the actual cosmetics you get through the battle pass are pretty meh. I'm not sure why you get it outside of the colors you get for your dudes, but the battle passes I've seen offer nothing that is a must-have. There's no content worthwhile really locked behind it, but it's a bonus if you're really that interested in it and you play the game enough. Most of the cosmetics and everything else you get in the game is collected with steel, which is very easy to acquire, though unfortunately you have to play For Honor in order to get it, or execute your wallet, so you have to make the call yourself, but the grind for steel is very polite compared to the grind of some other games. Could it be improved? 1,000,000%. Is it the worst grind I've done in a game? Absolutely not. Everything of value, such as the different armor and weapon pieces, are mostly collected through ranking up and praying to the RNG gods. You get that one cosmetic you want that doesn't look terrible with decent stats. Granted, you'll see many different colors for your armor and weapons locked behind the different battle passes. Is this a good system? No, not at all. But I'd rather have to play the game and rank up to get the drip and be pretty okay with it, as opposed to the only option for the drip is just buying it. For a live service game, things could be a lot more toxic on acquiring everything in it, and I think if they kept the live service completely the same and made the game free, I would be screaming praise for it. Since the game is $30 instead, I'll be screaming you shouldn't pay $30 for the game. Get it on sale if you do. The live service aspect of the game is fine though. It's perfectly inoffensive. It doesn't completely infiltrate every single aspect of the game, and I never felt it predatory since the grind isn't even that bad. Could the grind be better? Yes, by a landslide. But by the same point, the grind also is part of the fun of For Honor, since seeing the reputation go up for the heroes gives me dopamine. I miss when you bought games and you didn't have anything shilled to you in the game, but new age, I guess. What can you do? I don't really know a good solution to fix the gaming industry and the state of live service games. It just sucks that the industry's changed to a place where if you buy a full game, you're still expected to buy stuff in the game. I think that's silly, but there's also so many games that you can play that just don't have that problem. You could still pick up Inscription, you can pick up Skyrim, you can pick up Baldur's Gate 3. There's like 1,000 games you can play that don't have this problem. So I think I might just be being needlessly picky. Different games have different financial needs and different systems at play. Does it suck for the consumer? I mean, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's my choice to play the game, and I don't have to buy the battle pass for Honor if I don't want to, and I haven't. So we're all cool with that. There's actually no game with the same triangle guard system to my knowledge like For Honor. There's plenty of games that do funny sword game, but probably better. There's Chivalry 1 and 2. There's Mordhau. There's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 that just came out. No, I guess that's on multiplayer, but come to think of it, Absolver might be the closest mechanically, even though either way, no game that's within my sphere of knowledge has been found that matches the exact third-person 1v1 funny sword game jank as For Honor, at least one I can think of immediately, and I think for the specialty of it alone, it holds a lot of value to me. I know vaguely how to work within the mechanics of For Honor, so of course I'm going to be attached to the game since it's so unique, and I can't say most of the population ever cared or will care to sit down and play a game designed to bring about your animalistic tendencies of rage so you can watch a cutscene of you murking some guy. There's just a sort of game feel with being able to line up your attacks and know the combos and just decimate a guy in a fight, just like a fighting game. It's that fighting game nostalgia you see people talk about, like when someone finally does their first Guilty Gear Strive combo and is able to pull it off consistently, and then they move up to Blaze Blue or something else that's even harder. I think Blaze Blue is harder than Guilty Gear. There'll be combos next to each other on screen, so you can know whether or not I was right about that. I don't remember. There's a sense of understanding with the gameplay present in For Honor, and Ubisoft, somehow against all odds, built something with a lot of depth mechanically and nuance. It feels very rewarding to understand the mechanics, the characters, and how to go through fights, and having a gameplay system that feels rewarding and more interesting as you learn more about it is fantastic, especially for a game revolving around multiplayer and the main end track just being ranking up and getting better with engaging in that system. Many multiplayer games, you're stuck just instant locking whatever works at the highest level, and bam, that's it. And of course that can still happen in For Honor. There's still metas, and there's also a lot of specializations on what works and what doesn't work at the highest level, but at the lower levels, I'm given the illusion that with my knowledge, I'm able to still survive and be rewarded for engaging with the game on a mechanical level, and maybe I can bring that to the higher ranks. Is this true? Maybe, but I'm given the illusion, and that dream is what's holding me there. At times, For Honor may be an unforgivable bad mess, but you know what isn't an unforgivable bad mess? The presentation of the world and the gameplay. Do I like how there's a cutscene at the start of every match of Dominion? Heck no. Could you imagine watching the Guilty Gear Strive cutscene in full before every game? What about the Marvel Rivals map cutscenes? Come to think of it, I don't remember whether or not you can skip those. I'm not entirely sure. It's been a little bit since I played. Maybe cutscenes in online matches are the new normal, but who cares? This segment isn't about that. I don't care about the cutscenes before For Honor matches. I care about the spectacle during the match. Dominion maps feel pretty alive, and a lot of the stages feel like real cinematic showdowns, even if they're kind of empty or weirdly spaced and designed at times. Which I know may seem hard to believe, because they're really just 3 lanes in Dominion. There's the middle lane with all the little guys you can kill who push against each other, and there's one objective point on either side where you face off with the enemy. There's variations of this, but for the most part, it's 3-lane design. The sound design, though, elevates these encounters into so much more. The sound of blocks successfully hitting your opponent, and the executions really seal everything together. There's cinematic value to the way everything is designed and contained in a match. And it's hard to hate on something that works so well in cohesion when everything comes together. No matter where you are in the game, it feels cinematic, like you're having that fight if you can get invested and locked in during it. The executions pull the battle into exactly what it should be, with having a victory kill over your opponent in style. The design the game brings forth works so well during the match, and it makes these glorified 3-lane encounter maps feel so much more alive, with the design of everything in the game just kind of elevating it into being more in my imagination. I'll say it, I think the drip and designs of For Honor are completely on point. The presentation of the characters can best be described as goes hard, with the entire cast either having some stylish gear after grinding for 2 million years, or just having some off the bat. If you disagree with me, that's fine. This is just a recording of my voice, so leave your argument in the comments below. Outside of my opinion being fact, my evidence for this claim is just looking at the cast. So we're going to do a real quick run through at the speed of light. So first off, we have everyone's favorite section, the Knights. The Knights for sure have the most advantage, since I think outside of Griffin, all of them look clean by default. I played Dark Souls, I've read a lot of fantasy. The fantasy I've read leaning more towards Between Two Fires and not A Court of Thorns and Roses. I was gifted the book and I'm yet to touch it, so maybe they're the exact same, who can say, but Warden design is Pete Crusade. I don't care what your stance is, but even rocking the default colors, Warden clears. If you meet a good Warden player as well, buy that man a beer for being cool. Peacekeeper has all the good drip locked behind grinding reputation for the character, but even by default, it's okay. I like assassin aesthetics, and I played Black Flag nonstop when I was younger, so it matches up. Conqueror is Warden 1.1, same style, different canvas, I rock with it. Lawbringer, now there's a good design for a character. You know this guy is serious because he's using a poleaxe, and his design reminds me of the Pursuer from Dark Souls 2, and we already know how I feel about that game. Look at the Centurion. He's not even technically a knight, but he wears the armor so well he's destined for it. That and he wouldn't fit into Vikings and Samurai in the factions. He's peak and I will not go into detail. Gladiators I'm biased about because I really like the Colosseum arena aesthetic that video games can bring out. I think in another life I would have been pretty decent at wrestling with lions in the arena. What really seals the Gladiators design for me is the helmet. Black Prior has the appearance of a punished chosen one, and that's the story of every good Souls game, so of course they're passing the fashion test. Warmonger stands out as a class because they should have been in For Honor at launch. They look great, and even though it's just the model of Apollyon with a few minor differences, I still appreciate it for what it is. Anything with a claw hand and giant sword can improve anything. Griffin gets the privilege of being the only honorable knight who forgot his helmet, and while there are lore reasons he looks a little too much like an accountant I used to know, for me to take him seriously, his drip gets insane once you reach higher reputation levels, and he looks fantastic once you hit that level. But until then, you're stuck with a regular guy with a weapon. Out of all the knights though, with one complaint, I think that's a pretty good track record. Now, we're gonna speed this up, we're not going as fast as I meant to, so... Vikings, big Norse guys, all of them pass the drip check even with Ubisoft's facial animations. Shaman is the exception to this, since to me their face always looks a little underdeveloped, like they should have cooked in the womb a little more. Maybe it's my computer and graphic settings, maybe not. I know a lot of people play Shaman because Shaman holds the distinguishment of being a character I suck at fighting, but I'm just saying you guys deserve better drip for all, whether you're playing Shaman or not. I'm an empowered speaker like that. I think we'd both be happier if Shaman had some fashion pieces like this, as opposed to Bridge Baby Death Stranding. Highlander could use some more drip as well, but I think as a whole, his default is just okay. It's not worth raging over. Some people like it, even if it also falls into just a regular guy territory, though since the game is historical, there were a lot of regular guys back then who just happened to have giant weapons and bloodlust. Samurai, the certified combo felons, as a faction, they have the most drip in the entire game, and the two people I'd cite for having a bad default appearance, Shinobi and Kyoshin, have crazy drip you can collect by raising your reputation. Now, I do think Shinobi still has the least fashion options out of the Samurai, but they've still got some stuff in the end. Wu Lin, they're just regular dudes from ancient China. Yes, everything gets better through raising your reputation, and Shaolin has the ultimate gift, the Monkey King Wukong skin. But as a whole, they receive a resounding I wish I had more to say, but there isn't really anything for me to comment on with their appearance. They're fine. Now, the Outlanders, minus Spyro. These guys know what they're doing. I really like the appearance of all of them, even if I feel like the pirate really lacks variety in their appearance. On the other hand, the other Outlanders still bring something of value to the table. I mean, look at...
Khatun.
There is unfathomable levels of fashion here. I'd dress like this every day in real life if I owned the costume, and you can hold me to that if I ever acquire one of these costumes. I'll record and stream every video wearing it. Yeah, gamers, that's really all the evidence I have that the historical fashion is great. Is this historically accurate? Probably not. I mean, it's Ubisoft. Historical accuracy isn't really their strong suit. Though, they cooked with the designs of the game. At the very least, you could see this on a poster and be like, yeah, that's metal, or I like that. And even though a lot of stuff is locked behind a grind, at least you can't just straight up buy it. Though, you know, you can use steel to buy a bunch of other cosmetic stuff, so who knows what I'm saying. But point is, I think they nailed it from a visual perspective. Lao Tzu once said, "Failure is an opportunity. If you blame someone else, there is no end to the blame. Therefore, the master fulfills her own obligations and corrects her own mistakes. She does what she needs to do and demands nothing of others." He got 102 likes on Goodreads for posting this, so you know it's good advice. For Honor takes the saying and personifies it. Every time you lose the match, it's on you. But yawn, I hear you scream. My teammates are gaming journalists. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, my guy, but it's still on you. For Honor was designed with the philosophy in mind of everyone being the main character, or more so the potential to be the main character. The revenge meter allows you to handle groups of players if you're skilled enough, and you can always turn around a fight, even when you can't, and most of the time you can't, but you still can. Now, when we're talking about epic plays such as this, it's important to remember that there's going to be instances where everyone in the match besides you is on this level. And that's okay, because skill issue. For Honor lets you have the potential to do great instead of good when dealt a losing hand. The only consequence of that is everyone has the potential, and thus without a clear understanding on how to best utilize your skills or your kit, or understanding how to properly manage a horde of bloodthirsty lobotomites determined to watch the funny 20-second animation of your death, you're left in a losing situation. There's a potential, a spark, an idea that yes, if you get good enough, you can be just like that guy who 1v4'd your team and made you uninstall the game for a month. That is the beauty and skill issue of For Honor, because when you win, that is all you, dude. That is all you. You carried the team no matter your KD, because you showed up. The potential to rise above and be able to have such a mastery of the game's combat and be so deeply rewarded for it that the quantity of or quality of your opponents is null because you're reading him like he's the Bible and you're playing some Christian knight warden. Everything can just come together once you get a grasp on those mechanics, and it is so rewarding and satisfying to be able to execute everything that you've learned properly in practice in a way that a lot of other fighting games don't have, solely because so much of this information is non-transferable to other games. For Honor is in a vacuum of itself, so mastery of it is something special. For Honor created a fantastic combat system that allows for player skill and expression, creating a very complicated game of rock, paper, scissors, reading your opponent, countering their moves, and figuring out how best to deal with each individual player. Now, how can you use this system? Well, you can play Dominion, which consists of 3 lanes, each leading to an objective point. The center lane is just a bunch of bot soldiers running forward and killing each other, and you can kill the bots to have your bots get the objective to win points, or you can stand on an objective on either side and wait until it's captured for points. Dominion doesn't reward the player nearly as much for killing, even though this is what the whole game is built around, fighting. I mean, if you and your guys just chill out and continuously slaughter 3 out of 4 of the enemy team in fights, but you're off point during that time, and one guy just successfully captures all the points while you guys are having fun, your team starts breaking down, and then once you all die, it's GG. I think Dominion is a strong misunderstanding on why people play For Honor, but it's the most popular mode. It's what people are used to and adapted to, so they can't really move anything over. Gamers don't want to play the objective unless it's fun, or they get something out of it that isn't winning, or it's beyond winning. And people will still play the objective to win on occasion. For Honor brings to the table with Dominion is that none of your kills really matter, and that the objective points are really king, or just keeping the points. I think it's a little silly and doesn't match up with the setting or overall aesthetic of what the game teaches you to do. You're telling me the game where you have all these historical factions fight each other, they go to a map and they just stand in different squares and then they just kill each other? As said, I think it's the most popular game mode in For Honor, most likely because so many of the different daily quests have you do that as well. And before you jump at me with your swords, axes, and katanas with the argument there's 4v4 deathmatch, I'd like to point out a few things about 4v4 deathmatch. 4v4 deathmatch doesn't have enough going on, and it doesn't have nearly as many people playing it as they do in Dominion. So, to address deathmatch, let's talk about the 2 individual modes that make it up. There's elimination, which is just 4 individual 1v1s happening between the 2 teams, and then if you win your 1v1, you go hunt down somebody else who won their 1v1 until your team wins. Is this fun? I mean, it's fine, but it just feels like the 1v1 mode, except you're on a team, and you're just fighting in the middle of an empty map, and you gotta sprint a mile to go check in with your other teammates after you win your 1v1. Let's look back at the For Honor reveal trailer from the start of the video. Notice how alive the battlefields were? That's what Team Deathmatch should be. It should be this epic battle of grand proportion. It should feel like you're on the live battlefield instead of just random 1v1ing a bunch of dudes in the middle of nowhere like it's an anime showdown. It's unimpressive visually, and gameplay-wise, it lacks a lot of spectacle. And yes, I love the mechanics of the game. I love engaging in 1v1s and seeing how I do against others. I just wish there was something more here to make me come back. I can't just do this forever. Surely they can expand upon it, somehow, in any of these modes. It's a great test of your skill, and on paper, it is everything a good mode should be in this game. That's why I feel a little weird critiquing it even now. But at the end of the day, it's just kind of okay. That's how I feel about it. If you like it, that's perfect for you. I just wish we got something closer to that initial reveal anywhere in the game. I find this mode a lot more fun to watch than it is to play, since I like seeing how people go about their 1v1s in this setting as opposed to the regular ones. Since when I play For Honor, normally I'm so laser focused on what I'm doing instead of what other people are doing that aren't the guy I'm directly locked onto. So, while elimination works, it doesn't work enough to keep me entertained. There's an entirely different mode for Team Deathmatch, which is Skirmish, that's a little similar to Dominion, except there's no points. There's still soldiers, and you just run around and kill each other. I like this a lot more than Elimination. I think this is a better direction than Elimination. My only grievance being the soldiers don't really do much besides stand there and interrupt your executions. The mode feels weirdly more empty because it feels like this was supposed to feel more alive than Elimination, and there isn't really enough to separate it. I mean, by definition, it is less empty than Elimination, so maybe I'm throwing a fit over nothing. I just wish there was a way for them to take these great bedrock systems of combat and find a mode that lets the battlefield feel alive, like have that massive spectacle that I want. What about Elimination, but instead of 4v4, it's 15v15, and it's all on a giant battlefield where the fights are happening right next to each other, as opposed to them happening in separate continents. You guys are just two lines and you clash. I mean, you could even throw the soldiers in there too to make things more crowded, just have as much stuff going on as possible. Would this work as a mode? I'm not entirely sure. I doubt it, but it's worth a try. It's a new idea. It's a different way to engage with the game as opposed to engage with the same mechanics in the same environment in every single mode, just with mild differences. I feel For Honor is vastly limited by its modes and how few players are actually present in each match to make things better. Now, I understand that a lot of this is because at its core, it's still a fighting game. There's standards to be upheld. Nobody wants their matches of fighting game to be complete hell randomness or have hordes of people so you can't focus on that 1v1 aspect. And I get that. I just think For Honor's modes don't really capitalize on its strengths. I wish there was a way to fix it outside of removing the zones from Dominion and then just having them fight without the zones, or just having them do a bunch of 1v1s really far away. I wish they came up with a way to really make the team aspect work and for me to engage with it. I feel For Honor's modes act as a limitation instead of something that expands upon the mechanics we get, because I still feel there's a lot with the actual combat system that's left unexplored with the multiplayer aspect of For Honor. We still have more modes to discuss as well. There's Tribute. From what I understand, it's essentially Capture the Flag, but I couldn't tell you. I actually could not find a game after trying for 2-ish weeks on and off. Granted, when I did my footage collecting, it was late at night, so maybe everybody was asleep or playing the other modes. No clue if Tribute fixes my problems with the other modes. I doubt it, since there's not much of a population for it, and unless that has drastically shifted since September of 2024, I think that's where it's going to remain. For Honor is still a live service, and events bring in modes though. There was Rescue, which I tried out, and I did not like it, and here's why. You and a team of 4 run around killing bots and stand in circles while this blacksmith guy wanders around. The bots are all a joke, and even when you die, there really isn't a consequence. I don't think you can lose this mode. I don't have any footage of me losing, so maybe this was for lore, which we're not even touching on much in this video since there's a lot to keep track of with the live service nature. Seasonal lore drops always end up causing headaches. Case in point, Destiny 2. Anyway, back to Rescue. I appreciate the fact new events add temporary modes, and it's cool that you're engaging with the game differently, but at the end of the day, you're either fighting a guy who can take 10,000 hits or a guy who can take 0.10 hits. The final boss is kind of neat, where you go into the arena and face off while protecting the blacksmith, and then the mission immediately ends, since you're just going in a track collecting points. Are all the event modes not good? I don't personally believe that. I certainly hope not. There was another one I played a while back that was similar to Skirmish, except there was a giant one-shot hammer you could use. I don't recall the name, nor do I have footage of it, since I don't think I was recording at that time. Are the event modes a bust? I'd say not always. I'd say Rescue definitely isn't worth your time, but I think they can bring in some fun modes. They're creative enough to come up with this system, and I am certain they're creative enough to come up with more interesting ways to engage with it, with all these confrontations, and how they've created so many characters with so many mechanics to learn and understand and execute in different ways, even across factions where the lines can somewhat blur. And the event modes aren't insulting, they're not mind-blowing, but they can be worth your time to just kind of shake things up from queuing for the same thing over and over. The other modes are Duel and Brawl, which is expected, and they're great. Duel is just a 1v1, best way to get better at the game, or best way to speedrun uninstalling the game, or being flamed in your inbox. Brawl is a 2v2, same deal as Elimination, except you guys are much closer to each other. These modes are good and should always stay. I think Duel, Brawl, Deathmatch, and even Dominion are your most solid options, even if Dominion is very gamey in its feel as opposed to the other modes. It's still fun. The campaign is also there for you to tear it up in, and I almost forgot about Arcade, which is really just for gear farming. It's a pseudo-roguelike where you don't get upgrades or any permanent upgrades, but you get a bunch of enemies or battles, and there's a bunch of random modifiers for you and the enemies. It's cool to change up how you play, but the mode is pretty limited in scope. If you have a friend who plays this game, I'd highly encourage trying it with them, since I think you can have up to 2 people for it. I'm guessing it was made with 2 people in mind to kind of bounce strats off of each other during your run. I like the concept. I'm cool. I'm okay with it, but I'm not like jaw on the floor either. Don't try the higher arcade difficulties without having high enough level gear though. You will get your teeth kicked in, unless of course you're just an expert pro gamer. And the last mode to discuss is Breach, which I waited to talk about because I actually really like this mode. Except the fact the matches sometimes go on way too long. It feels like a real battle, and the maps are large. They're not just lanes you run down. The mode is 4v4 like all the others, but there's defenders and attackers, and the mode is just attackers trying to push a battering ram to destroy the gates and then reach the sanctum to defeat a super boss, while the defenders try to stop them at every turn. I like Breach, and even though I think there's places Breach could be improved, I can't help but see the good in this, and them trying to capture that cinematic look and feel the game's initial reveal had. Is it balanced? Maybe? I don't know. There's a lot of map awareness and understanding that goes into this mode, which is already a lot on top of knowing all of For Honor's mechanics just for combat, and I still can't grasp all of them to this day and when best to go about everything. But is Breach the resounding answer to my For Honor mode problems? Maybe. It's not exactly what I envisioned, but there is a lot of good here, even if the population isn't as high as Dominion. And the only downside is how when I was playing back in September, there were constant I don't know whether it's my computer, the game itself, or global and socio-economic effects in the Ubisoft ecosystem, but I've had a lot of games with random disconnects. Normally in game, everything works pretty smooth. I'm wired in, I'm an internet personality after all, and I have read a lot of posts on people having problems outside of me, which is why I bring it up here. Full disclosure, a lot of my playtime was from fall to winter, so maybe everything has improved since then. My experience just has consisted of the servers executing me just as much as other players have. I guess keep that in mind, and Ubisoft, if you're watching this, fits your network if it's still a problem. Hey, post-future editing yawn here. So the week of the 17th of February, I revisited For Honor, and I played quite a bit to see if I could replicate it. I didn't have any server issue, but I wasn't playing for longer than maybe like an hour at a time when I did, over the course of 3 or 4 days. Maybe it's fits now. I'm leaving this in the case that it isn't, since I'm not really 100% sure. Just something to keep in mind. And if it's fits now, the servers were bad before. It's just a little important to remember for a game that revolves so much around its online. Okay, cool. Bye. Hi, postmodern, modern future yawn here. So, I actually could not get into a game to save my life, to still make sure the servers were all good. The main problem was crashes. Crashes were pretty rampant. I don't know whether it's just this specific patch or what, but I had zero luck for the most part. I'm assuming this will be fixed by the time the video goes up, but as of June, this is my problem, and I don't really have a good idea to verify the connection stuff otherwise. I suppose just purchase and play at your own risk. I just have no idea what's going on. It could just be a my computer problem. So, do with that info what you will. Here's a graph on the imagined learning curve of picking up a new skill. My source is I made it up as a guess. Everybody is different, of course, but everybody is also under the impression as time increases, there's a slow, steady increase in whatever you're working on if you do it consistently. This imagined learning curve is just a baseline that I've imagined that a lot of other people can imagine. There are situations that come up where the imagined learning curve no longer applies, such as learning a language, where you can have high improvements in a short amount of time and then plateau. For Honor is a case more like this graph. So notice as you first start, there's rapid improvements in your skill similar to learning a new language, to where you reach a washed line, a level of skill where you're not going to go lower, but you're also going to hit that as your bottom throughout your journey whenever you're ready to quit or you're just playing poorly. Now, assuming there are no extended breaks in your routine of playing the game, and you're learning after every match a little bit, the graph will have a steady stream up, though I wouldn't say this is realistic. Realistically, you're going to go back down and hit that wash line repeatedly before you hit that golden milestone of got good. Will it take 5,000 hours? No, most likely not. I'd feel horrible if it did. It depends on how quick you pick up the game and understand it, or if your brain just melds with it instantly, Venom style. While this is simple to understand, it works against the game. It's a very difficult game to learn. There's hero overviews for every character, which I think go a long way to helping new players and veterans understand how to play new heroes and specific characters, and there's a lot of resources offline to learn the game. One of the best resources for any player of For Honor would be forhonorinfohub.com. It'll be on screen. Super helpful website that just goes such a long way to helping you understand the game. The experience of For Honor just in a package or a self-centered vacuum stands as not new player friendly, even with everything they've done. And I suppose it's a blessing stopping people from getting addicted to For Honor, but also a downside because there is good here to this game. You just have to look for it. I just wish there wasn't such a high barrier to entry. It's a long journey to get good at the game, and it's very punishing to fail repeatedly. And I wish there was a way it could be streamlined to have a clear way to learn the game, or have a clear path in place to help people get into it and learn. Normally the first thing I think of for helping new players learn is Guilty Gear's Strive's dojo system that lets you easily execute combos and help you work on things and have a better understanding of the game's mechanics. But For Honor still has tutorials similar to that, and with all the hero-specific overviews, I'm not sure if that's the best way to go about it when they already have a system like it in place. I wonder if it's just something that you have to experience for a long time to understand, but everybody is different. So I'm put in this weird spot where I don't think For Honor teaches new players very well, but by the same point, they still have a baseline to attempt to educate others. It's just a very rocky start, and I wish that could be streamlined without taking away from the focus and center of the game.
We will rise together.
The fighting system in For Honor is specialized in 1v1s. You didn't need to watch this video to know that if you played the game. The lock-on system makes fights very focused. Same with the different guards and how you go about, well, everything in the combat. The game actively tries to aid players when fighting multiple people by allowing a revenge meter to build up and give them a shield, which when fighting multiple people they can use to also get a free knockdown. I just think it's a little weird how much this game revolves around team fights with the 1v1 system. There's not a ton of interactivity, and most players, when faced with a 2v1, are going to get their teeth kicked in unless one of their opponents is low on health. Now, you may be typing on your keyboard already, "Public Doma, you stupid. I can beat 4v1, Orochi, Storm Rush, LOL, Pro Gamer, watch list." What? Watch list? What? Watch list? There isn't a need to type that. For everybody who can handle groups no problem, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. But for the rest of the people playing the game, it's a difficult skill to learn. It's not impossible to learn, but it's not as easy to pick up as the other mechanics of the game. And the mechanics of the game don't really feel built around free-flowing combat that lets you manage multiple people at once. Is this an oversight with the game's mechanics? Probably not, because of the revenge meter allowing you to take the hits, make a comeback, and in most situations you can still come out on top if you know what you're doing. It's just enough to make a note that in development this should have been a little more considered. The game has been out a little too long for this to be changed, since it would drastically alter how everybody has trained themselves to play in fights, myself included. I just wish the combat system worked better for group combat, since in the end it's sort of held in place by its own limitations. Would a For Honor's sequel, I don't know, we could call it For More Honor, address this? Probably. I mean, surely there has to be a way to make group fights work. I mean, you guys probably have seen The Phantom Menace. Look at Darth Maul. Imagine if you could do that with Shaolin versus 2 wardens. Wouldn't that be cool? Now, I would hate to start from scratch building up my characters in a For More Honor sequel. And the last game I can think of that made a sequel to itself with very little changes ended up being not so hot. It's just a problem with the overall design of the game revolving around 1v1 fights, that it doesn't allow for smooth gameplay when other players are involved, when almost every mode involves teams and matchmaking. And I know most people don't play For Honor for the team fights or the grouping up. Everybody plays it to body the guy in a 1v1. I just think it's worth mentioning as a point that there is a lot of team-based modes, and the issue stems from the fighting system itself. It's really specialized in 1v1s, and that's what it's good at. And I'm not 100% sure revenge solves the problem, but it's something. Once again, it's important to keep it in mind. Believe it or not, For Honor is a little toxic.
I can't get a head off! God damn it!
No fucking way, man.
Fuck you, you fucking bitch!
Poor desk, first of all. He's breathing heavy. Fuck, oh my gosh. Poor goddamn controller, man.
Second, believe it or not, there's an entire Reddit dedicated to just expressing your rage about For Honor. This is really funny. I'd suggest you read it if you play the game and can handle it. The game brings out the worst in people. Enough so, I was originally going to have 2 points just for how angry the game can make people. It sucks to put aside time in your day to play a video game and immediately go through something more stressful than a hostage situation. It's the League of Legends effect. If it's a competitive multiplayer game, people will rage, especially if there's people on their team. I think a downside of the title is the nature of the game. It's all about For Honor, except Honor has more so the definition of winning. The game doesn't bring a chill atmosphere, since by nature of it being a fighting game, it's all about winning, and all of the executions and great ways to body people in 1v1s are all about dehumanizing your opponent for the dopamine that hits your brain the moment you watch their guy get executed. And it's worked into the game from the ground up, and that can't change, and they can't, nor should they change it, because executions and doing crazy stuff in 1v1s is part of For Honor's identity at this point. Toxicity remains in the For Honor ecosystem solely because everything is so high stake in the game. It's difficult to sustain a community of positivity in any game when all you do is actively compete with each other for being the perfect killing machine, where all of your fights are so focused on you just outplaying the other guy. For Honor isn't toxic because of its user base. Well, it is also a little toxic because of the user base, because most people are guilty of being toxic or raging over something at some point. However, the main systemic problem comes from the fact it's a fighting game at its roots, and just like in every fighting game community, there are sore losers and sore winners.
Nervous.
I absolutely agree.
Oh, that's a controller break.
That's unfortunate.
It doesn't permeate every individual in every fighting game, not by a landslide. There'd have to be armed guards at fighting game tournaments if everybody was that unhinged. There's a lot of normal, well-adjusted people who play the game and are just looking for a good time. And no matter how toxic your matches get, you have to remember there's good people out there in the game. Otherwise, you'll just go absolutely insane. The anger and frustration and the worst feeling in the world watching people taunt on your corpse will pass. Eventually. The game is stuck in a state of, it's horrible to lose. And it really brings out the worst of your competitive spirit. Is the game still well designed mechanically? Yeah, for the most part. I would just say not really for your mental health. Do your best to stay stable and chill. And remember there are stable and chill people in For Honor 2, playing to have fun despite what matchmaking would lead you to believe. This brings up the question though, what about people who just are toxic for the hell of it? Who hop on voice mic and just say slurs over and over until they can't speak anymore? Does Ubisoft stop anybody from being toxic? I mean, it's Ubisoft.
You captured Zone C.
I'm not even sure I should go into detail on this one. I could just show a bunch of stuff of people being mad. Roll the clip.
Today we talk about the fall of Ubisoft. Look, I don't like to hold my tongue, I like to speak my mind, and from my perspective, when I see a company that has failed to deliver quality to their customers, that have completely ignored any criticism, whether that's from the industry itself, from critics, or their fans, they get what they deserve.
What is Ubisoft's bullshit? I can't imagine anybody asking this question. Endless notifications, awful introductions, awful character creator, copy-paste side activities, copy-paste game mechanics, load screens, vomiting exposition, load screens, server connections, server disconnections, bars, 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 filler, 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 mind-numbing progression, multiple currencies, shit vehicles, obnoxious menus, pointless hub worlds, unskippable messages, and of course...
In some way, you are aware that Ubisoft is having a bad time, but you might be wondering what the full story is. Well, I thought I had you covered when I made most of this video in October, but wow, they just can't stop screwing up, can they?
Has completed his advance upon the kingdom.
Before live service games and battle passes became the norm in the gaming industry, Ubisoft was actually considered one of the best companies out there. Like the Assassin's Creed series was a genre-defining title back in the day that had a bunch of other studios out there trying to replicate that same gameplay formula. But in recent years though, it feels like Ubisoft just hasn't been able to keep up with the new direction that the industry's been going in, and everything that they've been releasing lately just has been flopping so hard that their stock price has actually been hitting record lows.
And this is why Ubisoft's approach sucks. They take things that work, things that players love using, different ways to play the game, and they just throw them away.
I'm sorry, I meant Ubisoft, where you at? Number 2, Ubisoft, please just surrender to Tencent already. After all those times you Frenchies surrendered, now's when you start putting up a fight? But all kidding aside, Tencent's just a new flavor of shit, pimps. But Ubisoft, you've been fucking up for years. You kind of brought this on yourself. You've ruined half your IPs, the other half you've forgotten about, and because of your NFT game, I just discovered you got Rayman somewhere doing coke off a cowgirl's ass. Listen, I'll wish list that and research that later, it's not the point. The point is, they're at number 2 because you Ubisoft made so much dog shit this year, I had to lump it into one worst game so they didn't take over the entire goddamn list. This year's been a mag dump of blanks for them. They started 2024 by launching their quadruple A mobile game that cost them a couple $100 million to make, which started as a Black Flag DLC, by the way, so I guess they spent 11 years and $200 million making that game worse. Then they launched the Call of Duty killer X Defiant, which was killed by Call of Duty. Star Wars Outlaws was so boring, not even the people who bought it played it. And they capped off the year by delaying the final nail in their coffin to 2025, replacing their big finale instead with not one, but 2 NFT games. Be honest with me now, Ubisoft. How much of Rayman's supply did you inhale to cook up these brilliant ideas? Did you guys make this in a weekend? And if so, why? Ubisoft flopped so many games this year, now they gotta pray for some El Salvadorian cartel to launder money via snow-sniffing Rayman NFTs. Moving on. No, wait, hang on a second. I forgot that they launched Prince of Persia at the beginning of this year. Nah, it's alright. So did everyone else.
Alright, should I be constructive? I think For Honor has gotten much better treatment than some of Ubisoft's other projects. So, at the very least, they've got that going for themselves. For Honor is such a unique game as well. If Ubisoft implodes, most likely it would get picked up by a studio that'll bring it back to its glory days, or they'd treat it horribly. But I'd like to think it would be brought back to its glory days. I'm not nuts about Ubisoft's actions as a company, as you can probably tell from the montage, and I get nervous when I see them being stupid, because I'd hate to lose funny sword game from Ubisoft being Ubisoft. I'm not a Ubisoft hater, except when I am. I played Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Siege, For Honor, a bunch of their IPs. I'm well indoctrinated. I'm just not shy about thinking they make bad decisions, so it's something to consider whenever you play For Honor or pick up any game from them. By the time this video comes out, it might be close to when Assassin's Creed Shadows has launched, or it's close to launching. Let me know how that turned out. I didn't keep up with it. Skill issue is a double-edged sword. Yes, it's nice holding yourself accountable for your victories and losses. I'd much rather lose because I hit the wrong button as opposed to some random slot machine chance decided whether or not I die immediately to the next hit. If we want to get philosophical, I guess in some weird aspect, I'm the random slot machine deciding whether or not I die in For Honor based on my actions. The downside of skill issue in For Honor is it's not perfectly applicable across the board. Not every character has the same amount of flexibility. In lower levels, flexibility doesn't matter as much as it does in higher levels of play, so this probably won't affect 99% of people watching. It's just something to consider. It's difficult to learn, especially early on when you're figuring out the game's mechanics, when people are just giving you negative reinforcement in fights, and it's hard to tell what's positive reinforcement when you first start, since a lot of bad habits work on killing new players when you start the game, and they don't work later on good players. Learning is a bitch. I'm trying to quit cursing. I just can't think of another way to express how much of a pain it is figuring out how to build your skill. Hence, see the graph earlier. Learning your skills and still being punished when having those said skills is unfortunate, and it can lead you to apathy towards the game, where the things you initially learned that filled you with thrill pulling them off lose their charm. Case in point, landing your first execution and winning your first game versus winning your 1000th game. It doesn't hit the same anymore, and it gets harder to figure out where you need to improve as you get better at the game, which is frustrating. And with Ubisoft making changes throughout the seasons and introducing new characters, you're constantly forced to adapt to a good and a bad thing. Is skill issue the game-breaking problem in For Honor? Absolutely not. Toxicity and the psychic warfare game of reading your opponents is the worst, since it can feel like you have no idea how to play against some people. I played a few matches of deathmatch earlier today before recording to make sure I could still confirm skill issue, and I did fine in most of my 1v1s, except this one, Afira, who kept wrecking me every time, and I still don't know what I was doing wrong or how I could have improved my gameplay there, and that's what's frustrating for me. It's when there's skill issue and you don't know how to improve off of it, and you just plateau the entire match without ever making any sort of counterplay or shaking things up. It's hard to know how to learn in For Honor, which makes the skill issue less charming in the earlier stages. and some people can just be stuck bringing their worst game consistently. Maybe skill issue is just a me and new player problem in For Honor, and I'm just looking to be mad that every game is always up to the player to use their skill to carry the team, even though that is one of my favorite things about the game, is that and the mind games you play with reading each other. On the other hand, I really love how there's that little glimmer of hope anytime I play, that I can turn things around and do something fantastic to rise above and win when all the odds are stacked against me, because I have the tools to do so, even if it's only ever happened once or twice. Skill issue is an important part of the charm of fighting games, and skill issue is a double-edged sword when it comes to fighting games. And it may just be that fighting games aren't for everybody, because you have to leap these hurdles of figuring out how best to play the game and build up that mindset before you can engage in those psychic warfare chess matches during your duels. It's a weird balance, and a lot of these cons can just apply to fighting games as a whole. The only difference is For Honor is kind of toxic for your mental sometimes. But at the end of the day though, it's up to you to take away the good and the bad of For Honor and seeing what you make of it through your time with the game. You either love For Honor for the rush and the uniqueness and the design of the game, or you just hate it for being an awful hamster wheel of self-inflicted pain. You can love it or hate it for other reasons, but that's just what I'm going with. Hatred isn't a lack of love, nor would I say it's the avoidance of love, like this Medium article. Hatred sometimes is the frustration of one not meeting the expectations for love, which I think perfectly encapsulates For Honor and all of the praise and love and hatred it receives. It's a game that deserves a mixed reception, because there's so much to work on, yet at the same time there's so much that's perfected within itself that makes it difficult to work on and express what's good about this game when so many matches can show you the exact opposite. If For Honor receives some sort of new life, I believe it ascend to being everything the community wants it to be. There is a good game here. For Honor isn't perfect, but it's not the worst game of all time, because there's so much it does right, though there's a lot that just feels wrong with it at times. It's a tricky balance of having so much good and a funny sword game mechanically, yet having so little to capitalize and expand on that good, while also forcing the player to hold themselves accountable at all times and to constant test of their skill, and forcing them to engage with their opponents on multiple levels, both mentally and I guess the emotional investment of wanting to win. There's something nice about that, and harsh, and I'm hoping after watching this, you can realize that For Honor can be both good and bad. And I also hope that you'll check it out if you liked it, and not check it out if you hated it. I'm done discussing why the game is good and bad. I just think I'm left with one question, that's why For Honor? Why did I even pick this up? I think when I first started the game, the Centurions had just joined, and then the Shinobi shortly after. Or maybe it was Gladiators, I can't remember, but that was when I really got into it back then. And I think I kept playing just because I loved the combat loop of punching people as the Centurion repeatedly and kicking them. And nowadays that really hasn't changed. I think it's great you can play a game with swords and still punch people and like do well and be rewarded for it. Outside of that, that's it really. That's my reason I'm fighting For Honor, which is a little silly, but I think people have fought wars over literal buckets. Yeah, people have fought literal wars of the bucket. So sillier things have happened. My name is Yawn. That's it. That's all I got. You can check me out on Twitch. I stream a little every day now. I decided to schedule myself so that I can spend a little bit of time with you guys. A lot of it is footage collecting for all of these videos, though some of it is just whatever. And you can check out me or the rest of my channel with all my other videos. I'm sure one of these niche games is probably of interest to you. Alright, that's all I got, fellow For Honor enthusiasts. Later.
And I thank God every day for the girl you sent my way. And I know the things he gives me can't take away.
Hi, my name is Yawn. You may know me from such hits as Deep Rock Galactic, but there's Evangelion Transition Slides. Or, Titanfall 2 with Cowboy Bebop Transition Slides. such bangers as those. And this is a bit of a developer commentary, I think. It's kind of weird because this video took so much longer than I originally had planned for it to take, and during that time, I can't even get the game to like run for me. So it's like very bittersweet releasing this at a point when, dude, technically I'm just having a pain in the game. I don't know if it's just my computer or someone else's. I don't really have a way to test it because my computer isn't like great at running stuff in general sometimes. But the most important thing to remember about For Honor is that in the beginning, I do think there was good intention, and I still would like to think there's good intention. Ubisoft gets a lot of hate, most of which probably not justifiable, but there's also a lot that is justifiable. I guess as a little catch-up on a few things, I actually played Assassin's Creed Shadows. That was one of the things I streamed the entirety of. I didn't post VODs for it. I'm forgetful, and I need to be better about posting VODs. And the other thing with that is that Assassin's Creed Shadows, I like okay enough. My problem is the game is too long, and I genuinely like hate the story in that game with a passion. I think it's like, it's enough for a whole video, but I have been trying to keep my YouTube channel to things I like. And speaking of things I like, I still like For Honor, I think. I still like it. It's hard because I can't play as much of it anymore, but I do think there's a lot of good here, even with all the bad I previously laid out for everyone. And initially, this video wasn't even going to be that coherent. Initially, I wanted to do like a Pink Floyd Wizard of Oz sort of thing, but instead of using a Pink Floyd album, I would just be using a single song, and if you just loop the song, then at certain points in the video, everything would kind of line up. And the one I chose was Beautiful Things. And Beautiful Things is reminiscent of a Ubisoft for me, specifically because people do not like that song. Myself, I'm mixed on. There's a lot of people who say it's like, it lacks depth, it lacks nuance, it lacks anything of value, and they're probably right. It's just some random guy screaming, basically. But the nice thing about Beautiful Things is that even though there's so much about it that critics and people and like everybody can just tear into, there's still people who really like have a deep love for it. And to me, I think that's cool. And it kind of reminds me of For Honor, though the deep love for For Honor is one I don't think anybody would ever really confess, myself included. I think it'd be very, very difficult to confess any heartfelt love towards the game or Ubisoft, given that their recent actions haven't really been playing out exactly as they planned, and Ubisoft has been a pretty garbage company, and it kinda, I don't think that'll change with their recent acquisition. But by the same point, I do think for what For Honor is, or was, or whatever happens to it, it holds value to me. I think there was something good there, and even if it wasn't really reflected in the game, at least it's still there. And you know, in the case that For Honor crashes and burns, well, I'm sure there's plenty of other Ubisoft properties that'll stick around forever. Rainbow Six Siege, case in point. But that's sort of all I have. It was going to be a very different video, and it took a very long time to get this video out. Way, way too long. Hopefully I'll never take this long to make another video again. And yeah, there'll be more videos on the way. I don't really super have an upload schedule other than maybe like every 1 to 2 months-ish, but I like my videos, you know what? And if you enjoyed, you can catch me on Twitch anytime. I'll make sure all that links is in the description, and you can also support me if you want to see more video essays or just me yapping about video games that may or may not hold any value. It's very difficult to rate For Honor as something that's been objectively good for the gaming community, when I feel like Ubisoft, they made Black Flag, and that's kind of it. Black Flag is really the extent of, I think, of Ubisoft's love, and maybe some of their older stuff like Far Cry 5. I think ever since then they haven't really been on top of their game, but who knows, right? Who knows? And in the meantime, we can keep playing, you know? Not for love or glory, but for cut to the outro.